Word of the day.
The Patois word is pasa pasa.
Word today is taco ram.
Our word of the day is duffy.
Twang. A little twang. Not true.
Enjoy tuning in to What A Gwaan.
It happens every Friday at 7 p.m. So check them out. And bye from Toronto.
Dans Québec et la Jamaïque, écoute What A Gwaan. Yes, What A Gwaan.
I am a big fan of What A Gwaan.
Relevant and entertaining, so keep up the good work.
Watch What A Gwaan.
Big up yourself. What A Gwaan.
What A Gwaan. Yes, What A Gwaan.
Watch What A Gwaan.
Always say I'm going to What A Gwaan in a yard. Check it out. 7 p.m. every Friday. Hello, my people. What A Gwaan, how you do? Well, it's another week of What A Gwaan, so welcome back. And it is your girl from Bongo Town. Remember, the community, the community, right? So it's What A Gwaan time. So time to call your friend, your enemy, and your neighbor, and just let them know that What A Gwaan is on. It is 7 o'clock Calgary time. So call the people them and tell them, say, What A Gwaan start. So I work with the Women's Center here in Calgary, and it's, as it says, it's a Women's Center. So we serve only women and women identifying folk. I work there as the social issues coordinator. So that means what I do is focus around community building. So that is what I do here in Calgary. So it's time for us to, do the What A Gwaan thing and just let us have a good time. So in order for us to have a good time, we need a whole heap of people to know say What A Gwaan start. So we want to welcome those who are listening on Fresh FM radio in London. So welcome. Hope you folks are hearing and enjoying and ready for What A Gwaan. You over there to remember for telling the people them say What A Gwaan start. So also What A Gwaan are the big things, right? So we are now available on Podbeam, we're available on Amazon, we're available on iHeart, we're available on Player FM, on all other major podcasting network. In order to connect with us, you can check out the link on the website, and that is whatagwaan.ca. And remember, in A Gwaan is 2A, GWAAN. It's March, and that's my birth month. Yay! So I'll be celebrating all month long. Feel free to send the gifts. I don't use Zelle or whatever. I don't know what those things are, but check out the website and you can send me a gift on the website. But it's March, and March is also celebrated as Women's History Month. So all month long, we'll be celebrating women, right? So March 8th is International Women's Day. So ensure to check out all the programming that will be taking place on that day, and throughout the month, celebrate and enjoy Women History Month. What A Gwaan National in March. So today we're going to be focusing on Windrush 75. That will be happening in a few minutes. So you're going to hold a reasoning with the big man himself, Mr. Donovan Simon. So get ready for that. All right. Remember, my favorite time of What A Gwaan is Patois time. So the Patois, today we're going to do a phrase to change it up and make it more exciting. So today the phrase is Parson Christen in Picnic Fuss. Remember, to make this thing interactive, to put what this means, I remember saying I have to keep it English if it's English and Patois if it's Patois. But Parson Christen in Picnic Fuss. So put it in the comments. Tell me what that means. So when you hear somebody say, Parson Christen in Picnic Fuss, put it in the comment and tell me exactly what that means. We want to also invite you to subscribe to our social media. We want you to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, on LinkedIn, and again, also check out the website. That's where you can get us, right? So last week we looked at Black History Month. So our program started on the 24th, and that was the last Friday in Black History Month. And we spoke with none other than Assistant Professor Marva Ferguson, and she is from Mount Royal University, not Port Royal. And we looked at the topic, Black History Month, honoring the past and building the future. If you missed the episodes, you can check us out here on Facebook. You can also go on the YouTube to find those past episodes and you can listen. So feel free to just check out all of those places if you missed last week's episode. Now we want to go to the news. So on Saturday, which is tomorrow, the Caribbean Associations here in Calgary will be celebrating Black History Month, and it's their theme is Seeds to Roots. They'll be looking at honoring the past and building the future. So that's on March 4th at the Thorncliffe Community Center, and that's at 5600 Center Street North, and that starts at 5. So check that out. It's also a free event, so you don't have to worry about paying to go in. Over there in Toronto, the JCA Ontario Women's Committee presents the 23rd Annual Women Who Inspire Change Lunch and Awards on Sunday, March 12. The event is at the JCA Center, 995 Oro Road, Toronto, starting at 1 p.m. It will be hosted by Sandra Whiting with a live performance by Mel C. Tickets are $50 per person. To get more information, visit jcaontario.org for tickets and more information. And now it's time for a little bit of news from none other than the Rock Dongayard. What's happening down there is that a constitutional reform committee, which will play a key role in ensuring Jamaica's smooth transition to a republic, has now been constituted. Minister of Legal and Constitutional Affairs, Marlene Mullahu Fort, who made the disclosure during the sitting of the Standing Finance Committee of the House of Representatives on March 1st, said the work will begin today. That is interesting. Can you imagine Jamaica having president and we're voting for our ministers versus voting for ministers and the winner of the major party become prime minister? So that is something to look out for. So the Jamaican Association of Montreal is hiring a coordinator for their Footsteps program. The role creates and offers activities for children online and in person. Persons who are, well, the perfect candidate for this role should have studied and have experience in social work and daycare setting. If you're interested, call Diane at 438-390-7763 for more information. All right, now it's time for us to, guess what? All a little reason with the big man himself, former Prezi of the JCA Alberta, none other than Donovan Simon.
This has been a great discussion. David, thanks for taking the time. All right.
Cool.
Yes, sir.
Oh, you know,
We're there.
you're there.
Yeah.
Well, at least last week you were on the gully side. This week you're not, so I appreciate that. Hope you had a great week.
Yes, I did. It was a very, very, very busy week, but a good
That's
one.
good. That's
Yes.
good. That's good. That's good. All right. This week we're introducing Windrush, and we've got Mrs. Marylyn Tapper on. So I'm going to have a reasoning with her. I know some things are going on here for take off. So
Yes.
hold tight. We talk, and you'll see all that happen.
Yeah, man. I'll rewatch and hear the conversation.
All right. Take it easy.
Yeah, bye.
All right, folks, greetings. Welcome again to A Time to Reason, where we look at different issues about health, wealth, culture, history, and community here on A Gwaan National. Special greetings to those listening at Fresh FM Radio London. And today, this topic might be of interest to you because we're going to talk about Windrush 75. Many years ago, many people from the Caribbean took sail to the motherland, as it was called. And we want to capture some of the stories as we celebrate 75 years of that happening. And today we've got the president of the International Returned Citizens Association in Jamaica, Mrs. Marylyn Tapper. And she has spent many years in Great Britain. And she's going to share with us some of her stories as we look at Windrush 75. I know she's on her phone, so let me see if I can get her joining me on the stream here. Mrs. Tapper, we have to get you unmuted first, though.
Yes, is that all right now?
There you go. That is perfect.
Oh, good evening, everyone.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us here on A Gwaan.
Oh, well, I'm very happy to be a part of your organization. I mean, we're not as big as you are because you seem to have a lot of young people in your association. We are more or less returned citizens, and we're an older set of people.
Young is relative, though, Mrs. Tapper. Yeah. Some people say you're as young as you feel.
Yes, but I wish we had in Jamaica some vibrant young ones like you, like you do in Canada.
I hear you. Well, listen, thanks for joining. Today we want to discuss the Windrush generation and things that happen. And I'm going to start by maybe getting you to tell us a little bit about back in the day. You spent 55 years in Britain. Share with us when you went there and what those initial experiences were.
Well, when I went there, the experience was much better. We're talking about Windrush because I'm really a child of Windrush. I'm the children of the Windrush. Most of the people who belong to Windrush are dead, and the last one that I thought of. So I managed to get to some people in London who are still alive, and most of our experiences. Remember that we were going to the mother country. And we just left our island, and we used to use the same coins. So you can imagine that a lot of young people of 18, because they had a cutoff point, 1825, and so took their children with them, and some of the children were sort of grew up to become my age, and the bulk of the children are born in the 60s,
right,
in England, because there were really young people that went up there and those that went. So it was really very, very cold, and there was no welcoming for us because we were just people who went up there, as Enoch Powell and all the people were, because we went up there shortly after the war to rebuild the country. So we were mainly people who worked in hospital, on the railway, on the buses, because they took us from the Caribbean because we speak English. Most from Barbados who speak English, and we were more familiar than say most of the there were also Asian people there too, because there were lots of people from India, lots of people from Africa, and we used to live together as one people, really, because most of the children, would you believe it, that were born in the 50s and 60s in England were actually born in Indian home. So when we went there was no welcoming for us. No one was there. So we, I remember I lived in a house with about 5 bedrooms because we didn't have living room or anything like that. So every room was rented. And every room in the house was rented, and it would say 1 bathroom, and the bathroom would be outside. The toilet would also be outside too, because you would sort of see signs. I didn't see too much of the signs when I went there, but the older people would have seen signs: no blacks, no dogs, and no Irish. Those were the signs that were put up. So we didn't have anybody to welcome us. I mean, the older people, we had to live in the railway. In England, there were some tunnels. We have underground there, and under the tunnels, some of these young men had to sleep there. So when I went there in the 60s, 1963, it was much better because my family was there, my older siblings were there, and they knew how to tell us how to dress. But in those days, they didn't tell us how to dress, and then we used to see the bread put on the doorstep, and we went there and really clear it up. So living in these 5, if it was 5 rooms, they were on the landing, there were some stoves, and you had to punch. And some of the landlords are really horrible people. And in those days also, because we didn't used to having fire, there were lots of fires too. Lots of people and lots of children got burnt because, we just had one little sort of stove, like, a tall, where nappies and everything were sort of hung around it.
Right.
And then we had to punch. It was really terrible, for us. In that went up there in the 50s and the 60s. In the 60s, it was a little bit better because in the 60s, by the time I got there, my eldest sister, who took 7 of us to England at the time, had bought a house. So when I went there, I went into a house that belongs to my sister.
Lucky you.
Yeah, and we couldn't even get mortgages as Black people. We didn't get mortgages. So what we did, we threw our partners,
right,
and buy houses.
So, Mrs. Tapper, hold on a little. Let's go back a little bit, because your sister was there before you and other relatives. What were some of the stories that they told you about their experience when they got there in the early days?
Well, they went there in 55, and my sister went, went into nursing. When most of my sisters went into nurses. In fact, 5 of us were nurses, including myself. That was my first trained profession. So when we went there, but my sister, because one of my sisters, my second sister, she was really like the lead person and sort of looks after everybody else. So she went into nursing. Well, nursing wasn't paying very much, and she had all her siblings and her mothers and her aunts. So she went in and worked on the buses.
Oh, okay.
So she was really a bus conductor, which is
people,
really...
People were able to get jobs, though. Like, I mean...
Yeah. Yes, there's plenty of jobs on the railway, plenty of jobs in the hospitals, because remember, at that time, those men and women had come back from the war.
Right.
And they weren't prepared to clean up hospital work, do all these menial jobs. So we went in there and took it, and the Asian people were sort of very good friends with Asian until they sort of separated by passing an act in the 1975, the Equal Opportunity Acts. And then, but we were there living as very humble people. We didn't, most of the children, as you know, in Jamaica, the teacher is really the head person. And the children, some of the children, I didn't went there. I went there when I was about 15. So therefore I didn't sort of get into the school system too much. I mean, and at that time they would cast it out at age 15. Right. But those who went there in the 50s and 60s had a terrible time. There were plenty of jobs, because jobs were there, working in the factories, working in the hospitals, working on the railway, working on the buses. These were the most jobs that there were. And people, remember that some of us went there as skilled people. Some of us were carpenters. Some of us were were plumbers, builders.
Right.
We could build, you
Let's
know.
talk
So
about the social circumstances though, because a lot of what you hear around those times were how the society was structured, especially for Black people coming into that setting. What were some of the things you experienced or you heard from the generations before you?
oh, I heard, we sort of make ourselves merry because, as you know, at that time there was Prince Buster, there was Donovan, and all these sort of musical people. So we used to have parties every week down into a little hole, into one little into the cellar. But we used to enjoy ourselves because I mean, one of the festivals in London. One of the Nottingham Festival, one of the biggest festival in Europe, started down in Nottingham there by Jamaicans and Trinidadians and all these people coming together. And it's the biggest festival, and somehow we still have control of it. But like everything else, somebody else will be coming to take it over. It's the biggest festival, carnival, every the last bank holiday we have that started by us Black people, and we started our little parties, and even when a famous person came over to England. I mean, that's the dancing and the music and the reggae and the beat, all of those sort of things. We started it in London.
But is it because you couldn't go into the other places?
No, we weren't really barred as such. We could have gone, we could have gone to clubs, but we made our own clubs. They didn't sort of say, they will say to us, you can't come here, because there was also some sort of fellas that was sort of killing off Black people or fighting them. But as you know, it's particularly Jamaicans. We don't really take nonsense from anybody. So we were very, very vibrant people, and we would stand up for our own, and we would fight and carry on like everybody there, because that's how the society was based on. So, and it's not really like America, where, sometimes you go to America and you don't see one white person. You see white people next door to you. And on the surface, they were very nice, but they don't necessarily let you in.
Right.
Right. The racism was there, but it was subtle.
Right.
I mean, that's the reason why we form our own communities, we form our own churches here. We in England we buy churches too, because at that time they were giving away churches. So you go there and you sort of find that's why that's the rise of like the Pentecostal movement and the Church of Gods in Jamaica. We form our churches into homes. And then when it's possible, we see a building and we buy it and we build it. I remember joining the New Testament Church of God in Deptford with 50 members. When I went back in something like 2010, it became a podium with thousands of people. So we build, and these were little, we were just hospital workers, hospital porters, nurses. Well, the highest profession in my time when I was there was a nurse.
Right.
I didn't see any lawyers because they didn't train. Lawyers come to be trained in England, but there was no jobs for them. So they come back to Jamaica. So all those Duke Street lawyers, they were trained in England.
Right.
Because remember that we didn't have a law school in Jamaica until 1974.
Right.
Yeah, there was one.
Let's talk about the working situation a little bit, Mrs. Tapper. You were in the medical area for a while.
Yes.
For those who went before you, you said your sister was also in that space.
Yes, yes.
How was it to get education, to build yourself into that vocation? And also, did you get promoted in those jobs?
Oh, no. I mean, remember that those young nurses that went up in the 47s and so on, remember they were really very educated people. They were third-year Jamaica people, or they were sort of people that were family was well enough to send them to high schools, because remember that these schools in Jamaica, the only one that was Black was the one that you went to, Calabar High School. But say St. Hugh's were very much a Church of England school. that one that St. Andrews, it's only rich people and brown people could go there. So remember that when we went to England, there were no opportunities here, no opportunities for black people. So when England say, open up all these young people, some go via Windrush for £75, some go via the plane for £85, in those days.
Yeah.
So it was so there were nurses and there were educated people, there were third Jamaica local people, or have a good standard of education to become nurses. I mean, I trained as a nurse, and I trained as a nurse in the 60s. But I mean, I didn't stay there very long because it's still very racist, because there are women of my age who went into nursing and stayed there, trained and retired at the same age. Because remember, we didn't have any support system. So therefore, the women who were nurses would go work at nights in order to send their children to school in the day and babysit and take them. So in a way, there's a book called by somebody from Grenada that called how the British system has made our children, like children of my age, and educationally subnormal. Because what they used to do is take us and put us in what we call boarding schools. And these boarding schools were really schools for people who are disabled, lower standard of education. So, and that was very, very popular. But because we, as working class people, we didn't know, and information wasn't really shared. Yeah, we didn't know that this board. So when people sort of say going to boarding school, it's just to take them out of the system, out of the main system. And there are people in England that went into those systems, that sort of system, will tell you and give you the history of what it was like boarding school. It was very, very popular. People tell you about boarding. So our education in England for people of my age group is very, very minimum, and, the children that were born there, that's why they rioted. There was a riot in 1980 where Birmingham, London, Stockstead, Manchester, Bristol was rioting. That was in 1980. And those were the children that were born in 60s, the way how they treated us.
So
they would send us.
Let's talk about that a little bit, Mrs. Tapper, because you are the first generation of the Windrush, and here comes the second generation, and they're rioting. And that must be because in their minds, certain things were wrong.
That's right.
Things were wrong before. So what were some of those issues?
The issues were lack of poor education, because they used to give us, they used to have, at that time they used to have a thing called Section 11 education, and it would give people of my age group and those other people, the lowest standard of education, because remember that many of us in that went up as children there and born there, our first language was really patois. Yeah. So when we went to school, they didn't take us out like how the the Asian children were taken aside and taught English. Because they automatically think that we speak English. So we weren't given formal English, and, we were discriminated against. If you put your hand up in the class, the teacher would sort of go around. There were no black teachers there because, if there was very, very few and far between. So there was nobody to motivate our children. So in a way, even though we went to secondary school and high school and it was free, but we had the lowest type of education. Because remember, sometimes our parents weren't able to go to the school during their half term and when they have their meetings, and these meetings were really held at 10 o'clock in the mornings. So therefore, they have to work.
Right.
It wasn't easy. So, although, because I'm like the first generation of people that went to university. And even then, and besides, we didn't even have any definition of who we are, because we are called West Indian children.
Right.
Yeah, because we cannot assimilate. Now you're talking about me having 5 generations of people in England. No, yeah, and they are at university. They're everywhere. Because how things have changed.
So things have changed. In recent times, there's been in the news a lot about many of the original Windrush people who were mistreated by the Home Office and the institutions in Britain. What have you heard? And for some of those people, when you look back, what do you think?
Well, remember that the Home Office under particular minister had destroyed, they said they've destroyed the papers, yeah? And because remember that some of these children that went up with their parents in those days went up on their parents' passport.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because it's only in recent times that children are allowed to have individual passports. If the children were going on their own, when the parents sent for them after the 60s or 50s, when people were still sending for their children, if they were going on their own, they'd have individual passport. But remember that there were lots of children that went up there with their family, but they went on their parents' passport.
Right.
So those children sort of, I don't know what happened to them. They would have gone to school from age 5, because that's where the school age starts, to age 15, fit into the system, but perhaps, you sometimes you don't even think, or sometimes you don't know, or sometimes you don't hear. Because up to today, I was speaking to one of the Winrush people from England, and she was saying the way how they treat us, you would never take out a British passport.
Oh, okay.
There are people who believe that they shouldn't take up because we were treated terrible. We were treated terrible. It's only those guys that the only positive things that come about it is that those guys who negotiated our pensions.
Right.
For example, they negotiated the pension so that wherever we are, we still have our pension, and that was really a very good thing.
But you mean,
that they did for us.
Whereas when you go back and settle in Jamaica, and like I said, the pound strong, right?
Well, yeah. Well, I said the pound is strong, but it's weak when you sort of have to spend nearly $10 for a loaf of decent bread. You know what when you said $1,000, you're talking about £5.
Let me ask you something though, Mrs. Tapper. There are many people from that generation though who, like yourself, even the second generations, who actually did well. So the system, to a certain extent.
What do you mean well? Well in inverted commas?
Well in terms of, acquiring education, building some wealth, being able to retire. Not everybody, didn't get anything out of it, right?
Oh yeah, yes, because great sacrifice. Because don't forget, we are a people that believe in owning our own house.
Right.
Yes, and because again, we didn't even get council houses in those days. Yeah, we didn't get council houses, so we had to show a partner to buy a house.
Right.
And we live well, because I remember like my house was a sort of web of people coming in, even if it's on a Sunday, we didn't have any fast food, like Kentucky and McDonald's and all that sort of food. So therefore, when somebody come in your yard, you have to make sure that you have a tin of corned beef or so. So that's what the only fast food I know is fish and chips in those days on a Friday. Yeah?
Right.
And then Wimpy came about later on.
Well, I didn't hear about Wimpy, but let's talk a little bit about that transition and the coming together. Did those circumstances on a social level, not just for entertainment, but in terms of defending each other, did it lead to Black people, Jamaican people, West Indian people coming together?
Oh yes, we come together. We come together in churches, man. The church, Black people, the church is a very big church, but it doesn't, it's a very big thing. But, they're busy going to heaven rather than say, looking at social circumstances, sort of advocating for young people to have good education, to have a job, to not to be so much involved in crime. I don't know if you ever heard a man called Enoch Torrance that wrote The Rivers of Blood speech in 1969. In the 60s. And that man wrote the Rivers of Blood speech. And, you can sort of see that in some ways being materialized when the police are killing black and black. It's called black and black killings, because killings in England is sometimes just the same as Jamaica. You can sort of say too that, they sort of employ people from Jamaica to come, because the people who are committing crimes in England, commit a crime in England, land in Milan, back in New York, and the following day they're back in London.
Right.
There were these things going on too. So, you sort of wonder about the system, how these systems work.
Right.
But whatever it is, it's sort of, especially not so much the black woman, because the black woman can get pregnant, but they sort of go back into education. But the black men, we had in the 80s a thing that is called sus laws. I don't know if you've heard about it, whereby a black man would be looking into a window and the police would arrest them.
Right.
I worked in England. I worked in nursing, education, probation. All the systems of seeing how these and very much an advocate for all these injustices for black people. So we set up Saturday schools in England in order to help our black children.
Right. Some
of them today are lawyers because they are in their 50s and 40s. Some of them are, and because of the disadvantage to education wise to some of our young people, because like 11 plus, they had a thing called 11 plus in England in terms of education, which means that black children wouldn't fit into that category. Right. So in the 70s and 80s, they sort of have a thing called, forget the name of it, that people who didn't have those advantages of getting 11 plus would have gone into and did nursing and did teaching and law, and it was sort of a quick thing that when you compete 2-year course, and it's because you're competing at the university level to people who have gone through education from age 5 to say 18. And they'd have had all the skills of taking A levels and O levels, while these people just sort of trudged on through it. And but it did well. It sort of helped a lot of us to become social workers, and those are the sort of social workers today who are the managers, who might have and their children have the same problems at times as the people that they're managing themselves. So it's a sort of system, The racism is there.
It never ends, does it seem?
It never ends, but it's inherent.
Here's another one I want to get your take. So you've moved back and resettled in Jamaica, and you're one of the leaders in the resettlement movement. How has having gone back home and resettled, does it give you a greater appreciation of home? And how do you reflect on your experience after 50 plus years in Britain?
Well, sometimes it's difficult to settle back in your own country. But as you rightly said, I belong to a church. I belong to one of the largest churches, Baptist churches in Jamaica. And fortunately for me, that the minister there was also trained in England. So, they sort of think that, according to some Jamaicans, all English people are mad, mean, and miserable, and manageable. They call us the 3 M's. You've never heard that phrase before?
No, I didn't.
Okay. Well, we have the 3 M's: mad, mean, and manageable.
Yeah.
So fortunately for me, I came into a church whereby the minister was trained in England. So my little frivolous ways, or whatever way, he understands it.
Right.
So therefore, I get by. And for me, again, I came to Jamaica also when I was also in my early 30s.
Right.
As a civil servant. And I told most of the people there that are there now who are my age, I knew them. So it helps me to settle back into that sort of community, because, I also, even though I didn't belong to that community in England, because of the racism I came out of it, I belong to another community And when I went to that church and see the practices of what I've left, I thought to myself, that is what I run from in England. I can't deal with that now. I can't deal with it. Because I remember going to a function and the ministers go one side, the minister's wife go another side, and the congregation went another side. And I thought, I can't deal with that. So I thought, you know something? I better go back to that band church up the road there. So that's what I did. So that helps me to settle. You know, to settle in Jamaica. And also this returning resident here also helps me because a lot of the people and I share the same experiences.
Right.
But you know, we still have the jealousy amongst family. We still have the jealousy amongst neighbors because because you're used to. I mean, as they say in England, the Englishman's house is his castle. We are quite used to fixing up our houses and making it, because it's not a matter that we have more money. It's just a matter that we saved up, and and it takes great sacrifice to save, to move to a foreign country, to take up all your little accoutrement and move to a foreign country, because there's not many, and I'm sure you see people in Canada just who has that motivation to really come home, because it takes a lot of stamina. Because when you come, despite whatever material things, you're really at the bottom. You're really at the bottom of the heap.
Yeah.
And for those people, and even the killing rates that occurs amongst returned residents in Jamaica, it's not really strangers killing you. It's your own family.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Out of jealousy, out of whatever. Because I lived in Kingston, and I drive one of those sort of high-powered cars, and I drive. And I'm going down. If I want to go downtown, I just drive to Olympia. On my own, I drive to St. Anne and back up to St. The other day. I went to last Friday night. I went to St. Anne to a funeral way up in the mountain park, all by myself. So, despite whatever people say about the volatility in Jamaica and the challenges, there's some people yes, people will come on thief. Yes, people will come and if you leave your car door open, they'll thief. Because people are poor.
Yeah. And
they see you as being wealthy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because when we come here, we are careful. I remember, even if you have helpers coming in, by the time you look around, they clear out whatever you might have. What I mean, because they see you have plenty.
I figure you have a lot.
And they figure you have a lot.
The time is ticking, and I have one more question for you. When you hear stories or people talking about Windrush, do you think there's something to celebrate about that movement?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. Because remember that although there was a lot of people that leave from England who went to Canada.
Right.
Under the Windrush.
Mm-hmm.
And because we went to Canada, and we worked in Canada. Some of us worked because it was really my wish when I was younger that I should train as a nurse and then immigrate to Canada. So lots of people, I'm sure you belong to that. Some of you young people belong to that generation of people, because while Canada at the time when we were going to England, Canada was recruiting those very same people to come and work as maids,
right,
as domestics,
right,
and that domestic cuts across all the border boundaries. Civil servants or whoever, young people like to immigrate.
Right.
And the positive things about it, we who went to Canada, not Canada and America and England, not so much America. I don't know for America, some of them. We built our country.
Right.
Yeah. Because when it comes to sending funds back, I remember in the days when Victoria Mutual, not so much Jamaican National, would have town hall meetings.
Right.
Yes. With our parents who were coming back in the 90s and late in the 90s. They start coming back in droves. That's when our association, they start coming back in droves. And I remember going to these meetings and just, away to see so many people with gray hair, because that's the first time I might have seen people with gray hair. in those days. You know what I mean? That's the first time these young men and these women at these town hall meetings buying up, planning to come home and build all these massive houses.
Right.
Which is really quite a mistake. So we build our country because when it comes to remittances, you in Canada there. I mean, I'm sure I spend more than 200,000 per month in Jamaica, paying bills, paying taxes, paying taxi fare, employing gardener, employing helpers,
Yeah.
building. We spend our remittance is the greatest amount better because can you afford to send 200,000 to your country? Our pensions is really the greatest remittance coming into the country, more than tourism.
So what I'm hearing is that there was some good that came out of Windrush.
Oh yes, definitely, because of the diaspora. I'm sure you heard about the diaspora.
Yeah, yep.
The diaspora who are the diaspora? They are our children.
Right.
Yeah, that we sort of encourage. We encourage them to come home. Yes, it's volatile, but we hope that when you come back, we will be the backbone of the return residents. Will be the backbone, so that the young people can go elsewhere and fail. But they have the option to either go back to England or go back to Canada or go back to Europe, wherever they are. So we do some very positive things in our country. We go to our communities. We educate people. If a church building is falling down, the returning residents would put together and fix it. They would send children to school. They would be sort of contribute to the local community, the local hospitals, because my organization, each we call ourselves chapters, and we are in every parish we are in, which we contribute and contribute to the community.
Right.
So we help build our country. I mean, if you go to places like Haiti and those other countries, you see people coming in like Joes, but the country is still poor, some parts of it. You come to Jamaica. I mean, you young people are now building because you have the opportunity to get funds and you build and you can borrow because you're alone. We didn't have those opportunities when we were, us Windrush people didn't have those opportunities as a borrow to be educated. So we went to England. Some of us get educated. Lots of the lots of the Duke Street is the sort of chapter of lawyers in England. Most of them are trained in England. Their children are taking over now. But if they're rich enough, they send their children back to England to fast track the legal profession there.
All right. Well, listen, Mrs. Tapper, you have shared a lot of nuggets. I don't know what happened. Okay, Mrs. Tapper, credit done. But that was an awesome discussion. Something technical happened there, so she jumped off. Over the next couple of months, we're going to be sharing a number of stories about people who went to England in the early days as part of the Windrush generation. And their generations, their children, their children's children, will share some of that with us here on What A Gwaan as we celebrate Windrush 75 with our friends in England. Give me a moment, I'll be right back.
This has been a great discussion. David, thanks for taking the time. All right.
All right. I was hoping to get Mrs. Tapper back to say goodbye properly, but I didn't get her back. But I want to thank her for joining us. Nicole had an emergency. She had to take off. So I'm going to finish out with us. We heard about the patois phrase of the day, passing christening picnic fuss. For those who don't understand, I didn't see any comments this week, right? People are watching. If you understand the Jamaican patois, what does passing christening picnic fuss mean? Here's what it is. Everyone takes of themselves or takes care of themselves and their own first. So simply put, you give yourself priority and that's the Jamaican patois phrase of the day. Coming up next week, we continue to celebrate our women here on What A Gwaan in international as well. We celebrate International Women's Day, but we're doing it for the entire month. And we're going to have Maxine Willocks join us discussing the topic, Our Women Aging Gracefully. It Can Be Done. Maxine will talk to us about eating, exercise, meditation, yoga, and lots more. We ask you to join us next week, same time, same place. You also have the opportunity to help What A Gwaan, but also to share your story, your message, while we share ours. If you want to get your ad on the program, contact us at whatagwaan.ca, or you can send us an email at whatagwaancnd@gmail.com. Of course, we want to grow the program, folks. So if you're watching it, share it, follow us, subscribe to the YouTube channel, add your comments, add your feedback, so that we can spread the message of What A Gwaan all around. We look forward to growing with you. Thanks, Mark. Fantastic interview. Thanks for the support, Virgin out of Montreal. And of course, we'll continue to do what we do as we share the stories and share the experiences of the Jamaican Canadian people and people all over the world, right? On What A Gwaan. So, Nicole gone, so we don't get for chit chat. We are pretty much done. Next time, please, more comments, because we want to hear from you. But we're going to be back next week. We are on Podbean, we are on Amazon, iHeart, all of these different podcasting platforms. Check our website, whatagwaan.ca. Subscribe, follow. Until next week when we come back and we do it again, take care, walk good.